Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, and iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Our guest today is Chad Sell. He is the author and the illustrator of Doodleville. Hey, before our guest comes in, we gave a sneak preview of the Solve It for Kids podcast here on Reading with Your Kids, and it was so popular, it's like spun off. It spun off into its own thing. And my buddy, our dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson, is here to tell us a little bit about what's going on with this great new podcast. Hey, Jennifer, what's up?
Hi, Jed. Oh, I am so excited about our new podcast. We've been getting some great reviews. Everybody wants to find out what's going on and meet and listen to some of our scientists and engineers. We have done how do you map an underwater forest?
Yeah.
We have done how do you cut a person in half safely, of course.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We have talked about improving your connection with water by going on a water walk, and we have watched Vanessa Brantley Newton create illustrations that come to life.
I took a water walk with my amazing niece. We had such a great time. I didn't fall into the water, but it was really, really fun. And I love the fact that all of our guests are giving our wonderful listeners challenges, really fun challenges that they can do together as a family. And that's so cool. Hey, tell everybody where they can find Solve It for Kids, because it's not on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's its own thing.
So please, if you want to keep listening, go over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and subscribe. And you can download all 4 of the first episodes that we have, plus listen to all the new ones we have coming out. You can also find on Stitcher Radio and, of course, through our website, solveitforkids.com.
Jennifer, thanks so much. Thanks for letting me be part of this awesome, awesome, awesome podcast.
Well, we make a great STEM team, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, join us over at solveitforkids.com. Joining us right now from the Chicago area, he is the author of a great new graphic novel called Doodleville. Please welcome to the show, Chad Sell. Chad, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited that you're on. I'm really excited to learn about Doodleville. Tell us about the characters and the stories we're going to meet.
So Doodleville is a graphic novel set in Chicago, and it's a Chicago much like the one I live in. But in this world, all art comes to life. And so the main character in Doodleville is this talented young artist, Drew, and we meet a lot of her friends in her art club. And each of them have several characters that come to life. And the thing with Drew is that even though she's very imaginative and playful, her doodles rarely do what she expects them to do. They get her into trouble. At the start of Doodleville, they're on a field trip to the Art Institute of Chicago, this wonderful art museum, and she brings them along in her sketchbook, and they get out, and they run amok among the paintings of the Art Institute. So the book is very much about kind of the wonders and excitement of children's creativity, but also kind of the shortcomings and doubts and struggles of a young creative mind as she deals with insecurity and comparing herself to her friends and to her peers.
Do you think that insecurity is kind of magnified in creative kids?
Yes. I mean, I was a young creative kid. I still deal with insecurity. I think kids like me and like Drew, we gravitate toward certain artists or certain stories, whether it's a movie or comic book or anything like that. And kind of, it's hard not to feel just envious of the skill and masterful craft of making something like that, and to expect that of your own work.
Yeah.
But we are often our own worst critics. Yeah.
That absolutely is the case, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a lifelong struggle. And, in Doodleville, Drew inadvertently manifests a demon of her own creation that's fueled by all of her doubt and insecurity. And it was really useful to have that metaphor at hand in making this book, because my own worries and doubts and insecurities in making the book kind of fueled a lot of that plot line in the book.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you're talking about, the characters come to life, but they don't always do what the artist wants them to do. Do you find that with your artwork as you're creating your characters and stories kind of go places you didn't expect them to go?
Yeah. I mean, that whole metaphor, that whole allegory is very much a personally based sort of thing. You're doodling, you draw a character, maybe you intend for them to be a big fearsome warrior, like there's a character in Doodleville, actually, that's one of my oldest characters, and I initially drew him to be this mighty ninja panda warrior, and his name is Panja. But then my interest sort of grew over the years, and Kung Fu Panda came out, and I realized I can't really do this ninja panda character. And so Panja himself sort of morphed into sort of a cutie little pudgy panda. And sort of my characters often kind of take a life of their own and grow in ways that I wouldn't expect. And as you draw a character more and more, their true form is kind of revealed. Like you don't really, for me, it often isn't until I've drawn a character over and over again until I really know what they even look like and what their personality is like.
That's fascinating. Can you talk a little bit more about that and just that whole process of I was going to say creating a character, but it almost sounds like you're meeting a character.
Yeah, I mean, characters, writers and artists, I think that the characters that we create kind of do live in our own brains. And sometimes they can surprise us with like the jokes they might tell or what they might do. Especially as you're thinking through a story, you might have a scenario and you're kind of picturing this character and imagining how they would react to a certain situation. And sometimes what happens can surprise you, especially when different characters come into conflict with each other. And that's what inspiration is, kind of surprising yourself with your own creativity. So it's really a unique thing about a creative mind. And in Doodleville, the characters do come to life on the page, but it's not actually that far removed from my own creative process and from how I imagine a lot of other people's creativity works.
Do you think part of being creative is the ability to let go of control, to just kind of let your mind go, whereas a lot of people are kind of really kind of focus and this is where I need to be and there's nothing going to deter me and get me off that path, whereas a lot of creative people that just kind of go, okay, I'm ready? Well,
yes and no. I would put it this way. I think a lot of my greatest creativity comes from daydreaming, of kind of trying to detach myself from the everyday worries and concerns of what I have to do today, and just sort of daydreaming, getting lost in thought, making free associations, and that's where a lot of my creativity comes from. And it's when I'm too practical and too obsessed with getting everything done and being productive that I have a really hard time letting those creative juices flow. Yeah. I think a lot of creative people actually want a lot of control. One of the things I like about comics is Doodleville I wrote and drew by myself. So the whole world is created from my hand and from my brain, for better or worse. There are certain things I don't like doing, like drawing buildings. And so drawing the Art Institute was a big challenge for me. But I was at least able to evoke this entire world out of my imagination. And that's what I have an afterword in Doodleville where I tell my readers, even though your artwork might not magically spring to life, you can bring your own characters to life, just like I did in the book you just read. Yeah. You can make your own book or draw your own characters and bring them to life in your own way.
graphic novels, it's not a new thing, but it's new-ish, and I didn't appreciate the value of my son, who absolutely adored graphic novels. And when he was in middle school, and I've shared this on the podcast in the past, when he was in middle school, we'd go out and we'd get him the graphic novels that he's looking for, the manga that he was looking for, and, kind of celebrate that. But maybe every week or every other week, I would walk into his room and see him reading another graphic novel and say to him, would you please read a book without pictures? Just one. And I didn't appreciate the fact that reading graphic novels is reading. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I love literacy. I love reading a prose novel. I think words are very, very powerful. But I think especially for some young readers, especially if they're struggling with reading conventional novels, I've heard from so many librarians and parents and teachers that their kid had never read a book on their own, but then they picked up my first graphic novel, The Cardboard Kingdom, and have read it 3 times. Mm-hmm. I think that some of us are more visual learners or can relate to a character more if we can see them and see what they're going through and see the expression on their face. So the kind of story that you can tell with words as opposed to words and pictures is different. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it's better or worse. Mm-hmm. And of course, I think that literacy is a crucial part of, being in our society, and that absolutely that should be a focus in education. But I, as a kid, loved graphic novels. I loved comic books, superhero comics, Spider-Man, X-Men, everything like that. And there's just something about the visual imagination that comics can spark interest in that a prose novel just might not. And so I try to tell rich, complicated, meaningful stories that are worth reading and worth telling and sharing in my graphic novels. And even though there aren't as many words per page as a chapter book, I hope that it's still a meaningful experience.
Yeah. Well, as you were speaking, I'm thinking, one of the things that my son's teachers, some of them would joke about it, some of them would tell me in a kind of exasperated way, is that he had a lot of extra energy. And, he did have some attention issues. And I'm wondering if the graphic novel is better able to hold the attention of kids who have all that energy and all those issues with attention.
I think so. I think, my graphic novels, I often hear or even see kids read them in like an hour and a half or 2 hours. I think that being able to finish a book all on your own in one sitting is very powerful for kids. And then I hear from a lot of parents that their kids read the book so much that it falls apart. So I think that's a huge element. I think that art provides context clues for what's going on. I've heard from librarians that struggling readers can get through a graphic novel more easily because of the context clues, because there are pictures demonstrating what's going on and what's being said. Mm-hmm. And I've also heard that English as second language learners also really benefit from graphic novels because of those same sort of context clues and visual aids.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that as, a way to kind of give, especially English language learners, that extra confidence and that extra aid in terms of, because it doesn't matter how many English lessons you take or whatever language lesson, you're always going to be running into words that you haven't encountered before. And if you're encountering that within the context of a graphic novel, it's a lot easier to figure out the word. And talk about a great empowering experience for kids to just be able to, I did this on my own.
Right. Yeah. I'm all about kind of empowering kids both to feel capable of reading the book and of making their own work, With Doodleville, I wanted all the drawings to look like something that kids could do themselves. And in fact, I, encourage kids at the end to draw their own characters. And I'm hoping to do some fun collaborative activities online that allow me to see kids' creative energies and to work with them and respond to them. You know, I really, the last thing I want is for a kid to pick up one of my books and to look at the drawings and say, I could never do that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want it to feel very approachable and accessible. You know, my first book was Cardboard Kingdom, and it's all about these kids who dress up in their homemade cardboard outfits. And when I visit schools and talk to kids, I tell them, you know, I picked cardboard because that's something that all of you have in your houses that you don't necessarily even buy, that you would otherwise throw away. And you can make something really cool out of it, just like the kids in this book do. You're
absolutely right. We host international students here in our home, and the first 2 kids that we hosted came to Boston for a summer intensive program at Boston Architectural Institute. And their year in assignment, they invited us to go and check it out, was to create a chair that was big enough and strong enough to hold a very large gentleman comfortably. And we went in to see this. We saw the person that it had to hold, and he was very large. And the chairs, the designs were amazing, and they were really comfortable and really strong. So, yeah, cardboard is that thing we take for granted that's really versatile.
Yeah, I feel like you don't need fancy materials to make something special or meaningful or fun or creative, you know. So it's kind of a common theme in all my work so far, sort of creativity as magic and the empowerment of imagination.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how parents can – we talk a lot about the benefits of reading together with our kids, but I think creating together with our kids, especially if you have a kid who is creative, can be also a really beneficial activity. How can a family, and especially parents who don't think of themselves as especially artistic or creative, really kind of come together and encourage kids' creativities and actually have fun creating together with their kids?
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree. Creating together, I think, is magical, and I'm excited for my nieces and nephews to get a little bit older so that I can do arts and crafts with them and make stuff with them. With Cardboard Kingdom, I've seen lots of parents make incredible cardboard costumes at home with their kids. A lot of times the adult can do a lot of the cutting of the cardboard and maybe even the painting, because that can get kind of messy. But then the kid would often like to design it and model it and come up with all the fun accessories or weapons or things like that. With Doodleville, there are all kinds of ways to do a creative drawing activity, you know. I'll be doing a Doodle World tour soon where I have these free downloadable print-at-home doodles from Doodleville, and then I'm going to encourage kids to introduce them to their own drawings or to their pets or to their toys and share those if their family is okay sharing them online for my Doodle World tour, because even though I can't go on a book tour, my doodles can. There's a fun activity where, the doodles in Doodleville are 2-dimensional little drawings that run along the walls and interact with drawings. And one thing that I've come up with to kind of emulate that idea is using Post-it notes. So in Doodleville, a bunch of the doodles ride on the back of this giant drawn Leviathan, this giant sea serpent. And so one fun activity I think that a parent and a kid could do is that the parent might draw the big, fearsome Leviathan, and then the kid might draw their little characters on Post-its and stick it along the back of the Leviathan. Or you could extend that to pretty much anything. Maybe an older sibling or a parent would draw a spaceship or a restaurant or a castle, and the younger family member might add their Post-its, adding on to it, or adding their own characters doing funny things on the spaceship or castle or restaurant, or draw right on that paper if they feel comfortable. I think there's something in play and in creation where you're able to see different sides of people, even those who you've lived with your whole life, and I think that's really wonderful. You know,
you mentioned seeing another side of a person, and I think of these times when I've been on stage and doing my magic shows, and they're very they were before the pandemic, and now we can't have contact. But bringing a kid up on stage, and suddenly this kid that I never know becomes really animated and is playful, and afterwards I hear from the teachers, he's never been like that. He's like a little, and so play. I think play gives people a chance to see themselves in a different light.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of my favorite times with family members have been during games and stuff like that, where you're just seeing each other's sense of humor. It's kind of this like safe arena where what you're discussing about or competing for or making jokes about is something that is safe and doesn't really matter. It's pure play and it's pure imagination and humor, and I think that can be really great.
That's the safety of play. That's so important, especially nowadays when there's so much going on. So many scary things, really scary things going on in kids' lives. I think that we need to keep our kids safe and make the world a just place, but we also have to find ways to bring joy into our kids' lives. And it sounds like Doodleville is one of those great things that we can celebrate together.
I hope so. I mean, Doodleville is funny and goofy and all about creativity. And like I said, it's also about doubt. And it is about, there are some scary elements. I like to acknowledge the good and the bad of, even a kid's lived experience of their worries and their anxieties, but then also finding solace and encouragement from their family and their friends to overcome those obstacles. Yeah.
I think it's great that your character is that you chose a female, because I think at least when I was growing up, girls weren't expected to be kind of goofy and fun, and they were kind of expected to do well and listen to the teachers and sit down. And it's great that we're letting every kid know that you can be goofy, you can be creative, you can be fun.
Yeah. One of the recurring elements of all of my work is trying to create inclusive characters, diverse characters who are constantly trying to work against the expectations placed on them. That was definitely a huge theme in Cardboard Kingdom, and I've tried to carry it over into Doodleville too, where Drew and all of her friends, I think, tried to kind of push back against any labels or categories placed upon them. And you're right, Drew is not the best artist in her group. She's the most playful and whimsical. And yeah, that might not be a conventionally feminine role, but it was exciting to bring her to life.
Yeah. What's next for Chad Sal? Are you already working on the next project? Are you thinking about doing something completely out of character for you? Maybe create that next piece that's going into the Chicago Art Institute, or is it another graphic novel? Doodleville is only my second book, and it's the first book that I wrote by myself. And I feel like I'm in a great creative groove. I love writing like meaningful books for kids. So I want to keep that going. So Cardboard Kingdom came out 2 years ago. Doodleville comes out June 9th. And I just am finishing Cardboard Kingdom Book 2, which will be out next year. And then I'm going to start writing Doodleville Book 2. So I have this kind of funny arrangement with my publisher where I'll kind of switch between the two series over the next few years and put out hopefully a book a year to continue both worlds. That's been really exciting for me to switch between the two worlds and two groups of characters, just to keep things really fresh and exciting, because I kind of put all of my ideas into the book I'm working on. So then if you were to ask me to write a second book with all those same characters and stories right after that, I would have nothing. I would just come up dry because everything went into that previous book. Any chance that somewhere 5, 6, 7 years down the road there'll be a crossover and some of the Doodleville characters will end up in the Cardboard Kingdom, or is that like there's no way that could happen?
I never say never. I don't expect it to happen. But because both books are so much about creativity and like kind of worlds of artwork and fantasy realms, I could absolutely see overlap of like certain characters, like see the same comic book character referenced, or one character shows up as like a drawn fictional character in Doodleville. There are lots of possibilities, but we'll just have to see.
Excellent. Well, if somebody wants to see what's coming next from you, where can folks connect with you online?
My website is chadsellcomics.com, and on Instagram and Twitter, I'm chadsell01. And I'll be posting lots of fun things about Doodleville in the coming weeks leading up to its release.
Yeah. And I really love the fact, that you're challenging kids to take the downloadable doodles and to take pictures of them and post them online. What a great time to be alive, where we have this technology where kids can take our creations and expand upon them and share them with you and also share them with the world.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to see what kids come up with.
Yeah. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Doodleville, Chad Sell. Chad, thanks so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Cynthia Jensen. She'll be here to tell us about the tiniest little star. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, you may be frustrated because in addition to writing the book, you're now the marketing director of the book, and now all those traditional places and ways for you to market your book, school visits, book signings, library visits, they're not available. They're not available to authors. They're probably not going to be available to authors in the near future. So what do? Well, we have a program that may be the answer. It's called the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read Program. Now, what it is we have a great panel of kids and parents and educators, and if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that seal of approval comes a number of great tools that will help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. You can learn more about this program by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Author Services button at the top of the page. Find out all about it. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Chad Sell. Be sure to check out his graphic novel, Doodleville. Also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my producer, Fatima Khan, my author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support that she has given me. And I want to thank you. You've been incredible during this pandemic time. You magically became your kids' teacher, their after-school program director, their daycare director. You became their music teacher, their art teacher. You did it all, and it was tough, and you felt frustrated at times, but you did it, and you did a great job of it. And we're coming out of this, and you've learned so much, and you've gotten closer to you. You have made the world a better place. Thank you